hope everybody's in good spirits and feel blessed. So, with that said, you are now tuned into my podcast, Difficult People Chronicles. I'm your host, Seriously Focused Johnnie, SF Johnnie, and today is another episode. Your Money Matters. Yes, it's the end of the month, so it's Your Money Matters detail. Someone asked me what is exactly going to be in the download that I'm going to drop soon. And what I put in the document is basically I jotted down some of the things I went through buying a house the first time, then the second time, and also things I dealt with when it came to contractors. I talked about loans, just a lot of different things that I went through that I haven't addressed on my podcast. So it's going to be in the document and things you want to know when you're preparing yourself to buy a house, number one. Number two, after you buy the house, because you're going to have certain expenses. And depending on where you live, yeah, might be ridiculous. So these it's just little things that you want to know to prepare yourself. And the reason why is because I had a few people who went to buy a house, and when I was trying to tell them based off of experience what it is, there was situations where they were going to buy a house and I was telling them certain things and they felt like, oh, well, you never or you don't have because they don't know. And they went and just, yeah, it came to bite them in the butt. And then they said, oh, I should have listened to you. Too late. And the reason why is because just because you let people visit your house doesn't mean you tell them that you own it. Exactly what I said. Just because people visit you doesn't mean that they know you own it. Because there was a lot of people that even when I told them I owned my house, they kept saying you renting. And that's because they were jealous. So I never stopped them. I just said whatever. That's their insecurities. So back to what I was saying. Today's episode is called Your Money Matters Detail. If you want God to give you what you want, first ask God to give you what He wants for you. You're going to go to God with whatever you want and let it make sense. When I was younger, way before I started looking for a house, my mother and my stepfather used to always send me to Florida, Miami for the summer. And when I was out there, my cousins and we would always go to different people's houses for whatever. And I always took a mental note of the layout of houses, the outside and the inside. There was just a lot of things I liked. Then when I was ready, much older, and I was ready to buy my house, I still had certain things in my mind of what I wanted. And I prayed and asked God to guide me when buying my house. There comes a time for some, like your ego gets involved in a lot of things and you want what you want. Now, me thinking about what I wanted in a house as far as detail needed to make sense. The ego side of me says I wanted something big, grand, that once I bought that house I couldn't handle. And I'm not going to lie. A lot of people felt like, oh, they thought I couldn't handle the payment. No, I couldn't handle the yard. Those that came to my house, they could tell. Because I'm going to just give y'all a visual. The backyard had 4 trees that hovered over the house. Huge trees. Then the side of the house had another tree, but it was smaller in nature. And then there was another tree by the driveway. Now, one of the trees that was hovering over the house, that's the one that fell on part of the roof. And when that tree fell, it fell like on part of the roof and also part of the back of the house. I said to myself, this is it. Yep, say no more. It's time to move. Let's get this joint fixed. and I'm going to look into something a little different that I can more handle. And the reason why is because owning a house, I tell you, is not easy, especially if you are a female, single, And yeah, I had gotten what I asked for. I wanted a big backyard. I got a big lot size. Big backyard, big front yard. I had trees and a whole heap of leaves. Leaves galore in the fall. In the winter, a lot of snow. I got the drive around driveway, and that was basically because if I pop the trunk and I have groceries, I could just jump out the truck, open up the trunk, take out the groceries, and just go right in the house. So that was easy for me, but it was difficult trying to maintain the yard. And the reason why I say that is because I met a lot of people along the way, but because business starts out good, it doesn't always end good. You have people that you give them a chance to do your yard, and what happens is they start to take things for granted where they don't want anybody else to handle the job, but they don't show up when they're supposed to do it. Then you go to use someone else, and it's like they tell you they know what they're doing, and then they don't. The one that knows how to do the yard doesn't know how to show up. And then the one that doesn't know what he's doing, you end up with no grass. And I was just exhausted. And I don't have I'm learning now, but back then I didn't have a green thumb. Like me and lawns, I was like, yo, I hate the outside. Like I hate going in the grass. I can't stand it. It's annoying. Jesus. It was just a lot. So when the tree fell on part of the roof and I started to get, the construction crew to come together and do what they do. Thank God for the guy who fixed the roof. Thank God for him. Oh my goodness. He was a blessing. I remember in my room laying on my bed and I was just staring at the ceiling, and that day I didn't go to work because I was just like, I don't feel like it. Like I'm just over it. It's overrated. But then I started laughing because I realized that I said, I went to God in prayer and I said, God, I want a house. And when I should have asked him in detail about everything I wanted, does it make sense? Is it for me? I didn't do that. I just said, God, I would like a house. Can you introduce me to a realtor? Can you do this? Can God, blase blah. But I didn't include God on my detail, and I should have. I got exactly what I wanted. Yes. Now, I was thankful that I had that opportunity, even though some of the things was just a headache, but I was thankful for the opportunity because I learned a lot along the way. But I really feel like had I included God on my detail, some of the things I might not have endured. Now, back then, I had a notebook of prayers and also ideas of things that I wanted. And then I had a construction paper that I had thumbtacked to my closet of the same thing that was in the notebook. So I would walk around with this notebook, jot down things I wanted, and that's what I got when I got my first house. Second time around was a little different because I learned my lesson. I wasn't as hard-headed. Took my ego out the picture because I don't know what I wanted a big. I did. I wanted a big lot because in my head I said, I'm in this relationship. I want a family. And since he moving slow, I'm gonna move a little quicker. But then he wasn't trying to move in my direction anyway. He wanted to be boyfriend and girlfriend forever, and I was just like, this is not gonna work for me. Yep. One of the things I'm gonna say is this: when it comes to things you want, maturity starts when you throw out your ego. Trust me, because your ego could get you in so much trouble, can give you such a headache. Even in relationships, you go after the thing that is so not for you, and you do not keep God in the mix. Throw out that ego when you're making certain decisions. With your plans, go to God in detail about whatever you're trying to do. He'll tell you whether you should scratch that plan or not. Anyway, when I sold my house, I would say 4 years later, I decided, which was the best decision I ever made, that I'm going to use God in the mix. So I use God for everything. Detail. I said, God, I need another place to live because clearly that was just too much for me. The house was cool. The lot size was just a lot. And even though during that time I realized I was dealing with spiritual warfare back then, because you see, I was amongst a person who I thought was a friend but was really an enemy. So every time I was around this person, things was happening. Then there was a lot of people that was jealous of the fact that they were just upset that I was able to make moves the way I was making moves. Some people just don't want you to have. Period. They afraid you're gonna have better than them. And that's what it all boils down to for some people. They want to be the one to have and for you to wish you can have. So anyway, 4 years later, I bought my next house. And what I did was I still did the same method, just a little differently. I went and bought a little black book and wrote down in detail what I wanted in detail. And then I went to God in prayer. And basically, I was asking God, like, is that what you want me to have? Because God knows everything. And God will tell you if something is a disaster or not. And I'm not saying that I didn't have issues when going after my second property. I did, because there was a lot of people that didn't want me to have it. And you could tell. When you going through spiritual warfare, the devil will create obstacles and stumbling blocks. If and basically what it was that God came to me and way before I moved and gave me an idea of where I was going to be. Like I saw it. I saw it. And I remember being in my first house when the tree fell a little bit after that, and I said to someone, I'm going to be moving again soon. But when I moved from that house, I moved into an apartment for 3 years. And then I was just like, that's not the dream I had. Like that whole apartment was not part of the dream. So I knew that where I was going, it was going to be beautiful. So go to God in prayer with whatever you want. Even if it's far fetched in detail, God will give you what He has for you. But you have to tell Him what you would like to have. Think about it like this: your thoughts is the power source. So go to God in prayer and let your wants align with God's will. Focus on what you truly desire. Be open to change, letting God do the rest. Meaning, you want to buy a house? Have an idea. Do you want a two-family house? Do you want a single-family house? Go to God in prayer. Ask God what He would like for you to have. Go to Him about the area you want to live in. Do you want a chimney? Do you want a backyard? Let it make sense. If you want a backyard, who is going to clean it? Are you going to pay to get it clean? How much can you afford to clean a backyard? If you're going for a new job, what does this new job look like to you? What can you handle? Are you going to be driving to work or taking the train? Are you going to work for yourself? Or you're going to work underneath someone in a company? What does your perks look like? How do you want the people around you to be? When you fail to go to God in prayer, 3 things can happen. You will get anything, which becomes costly. You waste time and money, or you become at a standstill because you're not clear, and things you expected just don't work out. It's like asking God for a man or a woman, and you get what you ask for, and then he or she is off. You went to God, you said, God, can you send me this woman in my life or this man in my life? And then you get that person. You were not in detail. You didn't say, God, can you send me someone that you approve? And then next thing you know, you're like, oh, ooh, I was just playing. Can I get a do over without that person? So here's some tips. Write down your goal, and it's subject to change every now and then. Go to God in prayer. Whatever God tells you, write it down. Whatever comes to mind, write it down. Whomever you meet by coincidence along the way and they give you info, pull out your little notebook and write it down. But keep God in every detail of what you want, because God will tell you whether whatever you want is realistic or not. He knows what you can handle. You don't want to sit there and keep God out the mix and then you turn around in debt. I thank God for the experience I had when I bought my first house, because it gave me an idea of what it took to own a house. It gave me an idea of what to look for in buying my second house. It gave me an idea of how to budget and handle things as far as, dealing with different things, property taxes, electricity, when the people come out and check the gas line, or, different things like that. It gave me an idea of how to fight when it came to my neighbor trying to move their property over because they didn't have a backyard. Well, they had a backyard, but it was real small. It was tiny. Like, it wasn't like my backyard where you could play kickball. Their backyard was more like they can have a barbecue with 5 people and 5 lawn chairs, and that's it. But in my backyard, you could play kickball. Yeah. So they were trying to basically move over a little bit on my property, and I started to see certain things happen where they would have a cookout and then their people would be on my lawn, and I had a problem. Don't do that. Don't do that, because they were leaving their junk in my yard, and it's bad enough I had to deal with leaves and snow and the landscaping, and then you're going to leave your junk on my yard, and then you're starting to be destructive, because for some reason the kids was playing with some kind of, I don't even know if it was a toy gun or whatever, and then they messed up part of something that was on the house. Yeah, it was always something. So it was a learning experience for me. I learned to go to God in prayer in detail, and even if I didn't know exactly what I wanted, I asked God, what is good for me? What is good for me? Because God will tell you. And I noticed that with a lot of people, thank God my craziness wasn't ridiculous, ridiculous. I mean, it was ridiculous. Like, the yard was like ridiculous, but some people can get a huge house with a huge lot size, and then it's just like, oh my God. Once they sign the paper and the mortgage roll in, it's like they can't handle it, period. I had an idea what I was getting myself into. It's just the yard. Yeah, I was doing too much with that yard. That once it was sold, I was like, yes, next. So that's it for today. Go to God in prayer in detail about whatever you want, whether it be a house, even if it's a car. Even if it's a car. Because like I said some time ago, there was a car I wanted, and God kept coming to me. No, sorry. I prayed about it first, about a car. I said, God, I need a car, X, Y, and Z. And God came to me with this car, and then I was just like, I don't really want that car. I knew the car I wanted, but the car that I wanted, mm-mm, mm-mm. It didn't even have a high rating. And then one day I sat back and I said, you know what? Let me get the car that God told me to get. And it worked out. I mean, he done told me the color and everything. Yep. God told me the type of car and the color. And at first I was like, I don't know. And does that color even exist? And when I went to the dealer and I said, I want this color. And then he was just like, oh, okay. And I said, that color exists? And he said, yeah. And it's a beautiful color. But God told me all about it. And then after a while, after I bought the car, I started hearing other people, the same car that I wanted, that thank God I didn't get. People started complaining about it, even when it was brand new. And I said, you see how God works? Tell God about your detail. So that's it for today. For a one-on-one session, email me. Go to my website. Check me out on YouTube, Facebook. Check out my store for suggested topics. Put in the subject box topic. Email me. All the links is underneath. Love me more and I love you more. Have a blessed week. Later.